I am extremely confused by the reception Counter-Strike 2 has received in its early days here a few weeks after launch. I could get why it might be disappointing for those who weren't huge fans. It does just look like a port of CSGO into Source 2. Those who weren't really in the know don't really have the context that the prospect of CSGO being ported into Source 2 was so far-fetched for so long that it was literally a joke for the last decade. And yet the only ones who would know that are the ones who are complaining. I will list my personal biases straight out of the gate. I am a huge fan of Source. I have this many hours in Source games, and literally bought VR and HLA back in 2020 just so that I could stare at walls in Source 2. Seeing the initial announcement videos for Counter-Strike 2 made me do the "Am I dreaming?" check back in March. So far, Valve have released 5 videos advertising Counter-Strike 2. 2 of them are kind of nothing videos. One of those is just saying the maps look nicer, and the other is celebrating its release. The other 3 actually describe new features, being CS2's new smokes, its premiere mode, and its sub-tick system. Each of these 3 are showcasing actually really significant changes for the game. They're good changes too, not Warhammer 3 UI changes for the sake of change. Smokes were begging for an overhaul for as long as CSGO has existed. They have been plagued with bugs since time immemorial, to the point where the only serious fix was to obliterate them and switch to an entirely different game engine. Global Offensive used sprites for its smokes, whereas CS2 is replacing that with volumetric smoke. Valve managing to add volumetric smoke into a game as an actual competitive element rather than a pointless sap on performance is undoubtedly the most impressive thing they've done since Steam. Global Offensive's sprite smokes were pretty basic and rife with issues. Simple stuff like smokes going through walls was standard in Global Offensive, but now is fully accounted for in Source 2. One of Global Offensive's sprite-based smokes issues that Source 2 sought to fix is one-way smokes. If smokes landed at certain places, they could only be realistically seen through a certain angle. I don't care what people have to say, this is horseshit, and I'm glad that it's been removed in 2. All one-ways realistically did was raise the skill ceiling to a ridiculously astronomical degree, which brings us to Premiere. Premiere is CS2's new, Premiere feature. They wanted matches in rank to at least somewhat represent matches in tournaments with map bans. I think this is extremely healthy for the game as it helps force you to have a varied map pool, but CS has some problems with new maps. Of the competitive maps currently in the game, 5 of them are in high school, with Vertigo and Overpass around middle school, and these 2 are infants. CS has always had a problem with integrating new maps, and usually the only ones that get to stick around are the ones that Valve makes. This is largely because CS maps have such an absurdly steep learning curve that learning any new ones is an overwhelming hassle. Optimally, you want to learn lineups for 4 different types of grenades on both T and CT side for just about every single possible scenario. That is a massive pain in the ass, so most people just learn 1 or 2 maps and stick to them exclusively and religiously. CS2's practice mode does have this new fancy grenade camera, which does help mitigate this problem a lot. But I'm gonna be an official Counter-Strike hipster and say that this should just be in normal matches. Not just as it is though, obviously. It shouldn't show anything on the little picture-in-picture. That should be obvious and pretty doable. The camera itself already selectively doesn't render smokes, so it not rendering anything except map geometry doesn't really sound like a stretch to me. I don't really think it should show you the full throw because, well, that would be a lot of screen real estate, and because if it dinks someone, it would show you that, and revealing that would probably be pretty unfair. Just show the end destination of where the grenade will end up, assuming no players are in the way, and cut as soon as the grenade is out of the player's hand, like this.
Laying down some fire.
If that's too much, the trajectory of the grenade, which is also shown to you here, would be good too. Where grenades are actually going to go, super does not line up with your crosshair, and so I think this would be a fair substitute. Such a system is in PUBG, and I've never heard anyone complain about it, it's just a visual aid. Before you tell me to go back to playing Valorant, an addition like this is very important for CS's longevity. Believe it or not, most people do not want to wander around an empty map for 2 hours listening to their character say,
Smoke it in. Deploying smoke shield. Throwing smoke. Throwing smoke.
over and over again. The accessibility this would bring to the game is enormous and for absolutely no loss, except angering elitists, though CS does have a lot of those. Maps in CS are so intricately detailed with an ungodly number of props, so knowing lineups would still be an important skill, but this change would just be something that's not akin to analyzing star charts anymore. So many lineups go completely awry if you're off by even a degree, and oh boy does that get slurs thrown at you in competitive. Anything to increase accessibility and decrease frustration is good. I don't think this would be dumbing down the game at all. It's making an incredibly esoteric part of the game far more approachable. The addition of the grenade camera at all is amazing, but I was very disappointed when I realized Valve didn't commit to adding it to regular play yet. The bottom line is that if you want more people to play maps that aren't old enough to drink, you need to make playing new ones more accessible. Learning grenades is the main hurdle to learning and thus playing new maps, and so logically, making learning grenades easier is a good idea. The only thing this doesn't tackle is jump throws, but Valve didn't even try with that either. The only way to try to learn jump throw lineups is to do this, which sure is fun. A smaller quarter-size picture-in-picture inside the picture-in-picture showing where a jump throw would go might be good. A half-decent tutorial would go a long way too. Now we get to the most controversial of the three main big new features: sub-tick networking. I will give a quick disclaimer that I am not a networking engineer, but this is what I understand. Ticks are essentially the states of reality, keeping track of everything from positions to equipped items to animation timings to ammo counts. Almost every game has these to some extent. Some games, the bad Bethesda ones mainly, simply use the frame rate, but good ones tend to use a tick system like CS. CSGO's official matchmaking servers have always been 64 tick. That's 64 ticks a second, roughly 1 a second assuming 60 FPS, which is the industry standard. Source is quite far beyond the industry standard though, because the Source engine is from the fucking Stone Age and runs at 7700 FPS on every single PC. It was literally a suffering from success type problem. People with hundreds of FPS were complaining about networking, which they do nothing about, because that must have been at fault rather than their positioning, weapon choice, weapon inaccuracy, movement inaccuracy, player skill, or the ungodly number of other factors. Instead, they wanted 128 tick. 128 tick means the server would keep track of things 128 times a second instead of 64. That sounds great on paper, but in reality is just a placebo. When Kinsey did a blind test on people a few years ago to see if they could guess if a server was 64 or 128 tick, the results were as accurate as a random guess, even when some of the servers were as low as 47 tick, and people still couldn't tell. So what actually is sub-tick? I think Valve could have done a much better job marketing it, for sure, but I guess they figured the majority of people don't want to hear about boring networking stuff. Here's how it works from what I understand. When you make any action, it tells the server the exact time it was performed, and if something contradicts that, as in two people firing at each other on the same tick, it takes whoever fires first in the timeline rather than always biasing towards one client if they both happen to fire on the same tick. This means that to even manage to fire at the same time as someone else goes from roughly a 1 in 60 chance to a cosmic coincidence, which seems like a pretty big step up and far better than 128 tick would ever be if you asked me. Now, the system does have some player feedback issues, as will every single possible solution to lag compensation ever conceived. There has been a big hullabaloo about subtick being more wronger than CSGO was, and the reason this misconception exists is pretty hilarious. In CSGO, if you fire, move your crosshair, and the next tick rolls over, your shot will come out where your crosshair has moved to. But in CS2, because subtick has recorded where your crosshair was when you clicked, it doesn't match up with where you're currently looking and looks a little janky. Though it looks a little weird, this means that CS2 is far, far more accurate than CSGO could have ever been, and it's the reason people are complaining. I will admit that this seems unintuitive without having it explained to you, and Valve still has many lessons to learn when it comes to marketing and explaining things better, but them being yelled at because their game is too accurate is just poetic. I would also like to acknowledge that there are currently some issues with Peeker's advantage right now, but like I said earlier, these kind of issues are just inevitable with lag compensation. It isn't really possible to make a perfect system, and when you have clients playing from different sides of the planet, there could really be anything from a Peeker's advantage to a Peeker's disadvantage. There's really gonna be no winning. Like this clip shows, it can go the other way too, even in Counter-Strike. People just like to bark at whatever is getting complained about. Valve is a company which only works practically and logically. They went for subtick because it's genuinely a better system than just slapping 128 tick on the game and calling it a day, but I genuinely think they should have considered with going for 128 tick servers for no reason other than to make the player base shut the fuck up. I am a little confused why people are convinced it's gonna stay in this kind of janky state forever, like the game is ruined permanently. I have been playing Valve games for my entire life, and I have never seen a Valve game get updated this actively. Rest in peace, Team Fortress 2. Even if you think spraying feels worse with subtick, Valve are actively listening and working on the game. Obviously, they're gonna, work on that. I assume people's stance on this game probably has to do with how the internet, and people in general, I suppose, have gotten far more reactionary and volatile, needing to have incredibly strong opinions on things instantly as soon as they come into contact with them. I played this game for a month before I concluded that it was good. I do have some whinging to get out of the way, though. CS's weapon balance isn't great. It's what this video was originally meant to be about. I don't really know why the Bison has survived in the state that it has, or why they haven't made the auto sniper into a serious alternative to the AWP, a la the dynamic of the M4s. Seriously, way lower its fire rate and magazine, lower its scope magnification, and keep it as a 2 or maybe even 3 shot to the body. Make it the option for those who are less confident in their aim, but can't be used as effectively to spam smokes and frankly throw games. Also, my game drops to 1 FPS for 1 to 3 seconds when scoping in with any of these 4 guns Valve please fix. I can already predict the comments on this one are going to be an absolute dumpster fire because I said CS2 shouldn't be absolutely unpenetrable for new players and that the auto sniper should be usable. I guess for this week's question, I'll preempt those people and ask, genuinely, why do people still play Valorant? Is it because it just gets updated often? Is it because of visibility? I'm not judging, you can play what you want, but holy god, CS feels so much better to play for me. The way Riot adds entirely new power crept champions every 3 months doesn't help either. At least in CS I don't have to worry about them adding a new quote-unquote side grade to the game every now and then that completely throws the balance out of whack. Imagine if they just threw a G36 as a rifle side grade into the game one day that 2-shot to the body. That's what Valorant's champion power creep is like. While you admire my form in the background, I would also like to let you know that I actually have a pretty significant second channel video up about CS2 if you'd like to go watch it. Thanks to Emmy for their reckless financial abandon. Both them and the rest of my patrons are wonderful people. Like, comment, subscribe, you know the drill, and have a good night.